You're listening to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women who replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women, according to the NIH and CDC. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee, and you will hear me interview sisters in loss who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Now let's get started. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I would love for you to share with the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. Well, my name is Laura Gooch Brown. For the past 17 years, I've been a social worker and therapist, working with children and families in a variety of different capacities. And I love what I do. And 5 years ago, my husband and I decided to start a family. And that's kind of where my journey began as a mom.
Yes. Well, take us back on your journey to motherhood and share with us your loss story.
Well, prior to when I was married, before I married my husband, I suffered 2 miscarriages. And, it was devastating. And I obviously blame myself for that. And, was trying to figure out what can I do to alleviate this from happening again. And so I went on a journey of losing weight. And so worked really hard and lost 130 pounds. So from there, my husband and I soon after learned I was pregnant. And so I said, this is our miracle. We did everything right. And, pretty typical pregnancy up until the 20-week ultrasound, when they do all more extensive testing. And we went in for the ultrasound, and the technician was doing all the images, and I was watching her face. And her face, I could tell something was wrong. And I tried to ask her questions, and she really wouldn't answer my questions. And my husband was watching a monitor, and he's so excited and, just so excited because we were having a baby. And I kept, motioning to him that something's not right. There's not, the way she's looking is, a little concerning. So she left the room. And then the doctor came in and said that our child was measuring very small. So that led into a lot of additional extensive testing. And then we learned after some testing that our son had IUGR, which is Intrauterine Growth Restriction. So his limbs were measuring very, very small. After even more extensive testing, we learned that the blood flow was going in reverse, which I never heard of as well, where, when they show you on the monitor, it's kind of going up and down, where his was going in the opposite direction, which, like I said, I had never seen before. So obviously as a mom, I was devastated. I was scared. I joined all of these groups on Facebook for moms of babies who had IUGR and, the children, how they overcame it, most of them, and, really try to engulf myself in babies who had IUGR. We ended up seeing a lot more specialists because they kept telling us that there was nothing that could be done, that he wasn't going to get any bigger. Even over time, throughout the pregnancy, he wasn't gaining any weight. His limbs weren't getting any longer, to the point at about month 7, they told us that there was no hope. that with the blood flow and the IUGR that he was not going to survive. So that was devastating. And as a mom, how do I now have to going from excitement, joy, eager to meet my baby to now having to say goodbye and accepting that? Because like I said, I went to all these different specialists getting as much information as possible, but everyone telling me the same thing. So I went in for another test, and they were going to do an amnio to try to get more information. And I went in and they told me that there was no longer a heartbeat. And at that moment, they turned the monitors away from me. They turned off the sounds. They completely disconnected all of the monitors at that point. So they told me, because, obviously I was so far along, I would have to be induced. But I would they couldn't do it until the next day. So I had to drive home, and I was by myself at this time, because my husband was at work. I had to drive home knowing that my son had passed away. So that led us to the next day having to be admitted into the hospital. And I can say that except for one nurse, because this was at a hospital in New York City, except for one nurse who really made the experience bad, everyone else really supported me, really gave me a lot of information about what to expect, some decisions I had to make, giving me all of my options. And so I was then admitted, induced, and went through the entire labor and delivery, delivering my son the following day.
So can you share with us about the delivery process? And then were you able to hold him? Were you able to have a funeral? How did that process work after?
Yes. It was pretty typical to any other labor and delivery. I was in labor for about 15 hours once they induced me. During that time, like I said, they gave me a lot of options. They told me beforehand all the decisions that I had to be made as far as, did I want him buried or cremated? Did I want an autopsy done? Did I want him baptized? Did I want to hold him? Because, those few days between knowing, that we were going to have to say goodbye, not everybody, but quite a few people told me, you don't want to hold him. After he's gone, you're not going to want to hold him. And my mommy gut told me that I have to hold my child. And I'm so glad that I did, that we had that time to get him baptized, to hold him, to look at him, unfortunately, I didn't take pictures, which I regret now. That was something else that they offered. But it was so many decisions that had to be made in a short amount of time that it was just a lot to process. They did tell me about the physical changes that he would go through once I delivered him. And I'm very thankful that they prepared me for that, just physically how quickly he would change, and that I wouldn't have a lot of time, which is why I'm such a huge supporter of the cradle cots that are in some hospitals, because you don't get as much time. And I wish I'd had more time with him after I delivered him.
Understood. Thank you for sharing that. So how was those next months and after that, how did you begin your journey to healing?
Well, I can tell you that, in all honesty, one thing, my faith has always been very important to me. But that was the one time in my life I can honestly say that I lost faith. I had so much anger and just feeling so much anger towards God and towards people and toward, how can the Lord take my baby when I have tried so hard to be a mom? And so I didn't want to hear people's prayers. People kept telling me to pray. Everything happens for a reason and all those things. I don't want to hear that right now, So my faith was tested big time. So for those first few months, I didn't pray. Honestly, I didn't pray. I didn't go to church. I didn't read my scripture. I didn't do any of that because I was filled with so much anger and hurt for what I'd gone through. I was just feeling resentful towards so many people. It affected my marriage. I was resentful towards my husband. I was resentful towards people who had healthy babies. My supervisor, we were actually pregnant at the same time, and she ended up going into labor and having her baby the same day. So how does she get a healthy baby and my baby died? So I was very resentful for anybody who had babies around that time. And I blamed myself. I had so much guilt because I'm saying, I worked really hard. I lost weight. I did what I had to do so I could be healthy. And I still couldn't have a healthy baby. It was something that I did wrong. So I was just feeling so much anger and resentment and guilt and blame and all those things during those times where, there were times my husband would have to get me out of, I would just be laid in a fetal position in the shower because I physically couldn't get out to engage with anybody because I was just feeling in such a low place.
Man, I think that takes me back to those same type of feelings. I would love for you to share, what did you do to get out of that dark place where you were able to kind of put one foot in front of the other and get to a place where you were ready to, move forward with your journey to motherhood? Yeah.
Well, once I one thing, I allowed myself to be in my pain for a little bit. I tell my client, I'm a therapist. I should know how to do this, right? I got this mental health thing. I figured it out for other people. Why can't I do this for myself? But one thing that I tell others, and I had to remind myself that there are times where it's okay not to be okay. That period of time shouldn't be extensive, but there are times where you have to allow yourself to feel that and go through it. That was just part of one of my stages of grief is I had to go through and feel that pain. Part of my journey, my healing journey was one, I learned my strength. I figured out that if I can get through this, nothing else is ever going to compare to this pain. So if I can get through this, everything else is going to be a whole lot easier. One thing I read soon after, and it stuck with me even years later, is let your pain have purpose. And that's what has really driven me, where I didn't want my son, his name is Jaden. I didn't want Jaden's death to be in vain. I didn't want him to just be a memory for me and my husband. I want to take this pain and turn it into purpose. So that's when, because of the way I am, I dove into how can I help others who have gone through something similar. Can I raise money? Can I do a memorial walk? Can I volunteer somewhere? I'm now trying to figure out ways to raise money for cradle costs. So other, parents can have more time that I unfortunately didn't, becoming a bereavement doula through your wonderful organization, being that support for others, and raising awareness, in whatever way I can. I've given a few talks with different organizations, trying to remove the stigma around stillbirth. People, for me, one thing that when I went to therapy, I thought I was going to deal with my grief, but the ironic thing is I spent most of my time trying to process how I dealt with the comments of others. That's where I spent the majority of my time in therapy, because I was getting so many comments that, even though they didn't mean it that way, was so hurtful for me. Oh, you'll have another baby. It wasn't meant to be. All these different things that it's like, no, that doesn't, oh, well, I had a miscarriage years ago, so I understand your pain. No, you don't understand my pain until you've had to hold your child in your arms after they've passed away. You don't understand my pain. And that's okay. But I was having to deal with so many negative comments just because people don't know what to say. So that's why I felt, okay, I have to help remove this stigma. I have to help people understand what it's like to go through this type of loss.
Absolutely. And one thing that I love about what you said is that you turned your pain into some purpose and you wanted to go out and help. Were you able to pivot your personal business to talk about, to help support families through bereavement?
Absolutely.
Or now, since you've gone through the Sisters-in-Law's birth and bereavement doula training, how are you now going to support families and really truly turn your pain into purpose?
Absolutely. So it's both of those things. So I do, part of my work is I do trainings, workshops, keynote speaking on mental health. But one of the other sides of that is I do give talks about infant loss and pregnancy loss and stillbirth. And just like I said, just putting it out there, like this is my story. And another woman's story is going to be very different, but it's important for others to understand, this is what this looks like. I mean, 1 in 160 of birth or stillbirth, that's not a lot, but it is, so it's like there's women who are going through this every single day and it's not talked about. So if it means that I can give, something like this, or if I can do a workshop or host an event just to have these open dialogues so people do understand what this is, how it can be supported, how it can be eliminated or reduced, that's what I'm going to do. With your wonderful training, it has opened up another door that I'm now reaching out to local hospitals and saying, hey, who provides this service? And not surprisingly, no one. So now I'm saying, hey, I'm becoming certified. This is something I would like to offer to you, and they're like, wow, okay. Yeah, we don't have anybody that does anything like this. So I'm definitely turning it twofold, either from the speaking aspect as well as the supportive aspect for other mothers.
Awesome. That just gives me chills and just makes me so happy.
Yeah.
I'm so proud that you are truly living and walking in what God has called you to do in this season, and definitely giving light and purpose to Jaden's life. So I would love for you to share your rainbow baby story. So how was that pregnancy? How was the birth? Share with us your rainbow baby story.
So my rainbow baby story started 2 years later. So my rainbow baby, his name is Jordan. After losing Jaden, we decided, obviously, we wanted to wait a little bit. But then we started trying again and we're blessed with Jordan. The pregnancy, I was scared to death the whole time. Every day, very nervous. And then, there's those trigger marks too. So when we got to 20 weeks, the anxiety really kicked in because that's when the first sign something was wrong happened for Jaden. So when I got to 20 weeks, I was so nervous. And every milestone, was very nerve-wracking for me because I was considered high risk. My doctor, my OB, who is amazing, Dr. Smoke in New York City, she was extra cautious. I got more testing done and I went in for more visits, because she just wanted to stay on top of it, which I'm so grateful for. So thank the Lord, the pregnancy went very smooth, but it was not without some anxiety. But he was born at 36 weeks. And that when I went into labor, pretty typical labor, but his heart rate kept dropping. And so I ended up having to get an emergency C-section. So that, of course, kind of triggered some stuff as well. But, thankfully he came home 3 days later, fine. He's now an active toddler, doing toddler stuff, but it's interesting because they were both born in the same hospital, very in the same month, both in June. So it was, being back in the hospital was a bit of a trigger, even though my doctor was amazing and I wanted to stay connected to her. It was also nerve-wracking being in the same hospital where I had lost Jaden. Even seeing, and it's funny, the tiles on the floor triggered me when I went into labor because it was the same, obviously, same floor tiles that I had seen a few years prior. But thankfully, everything turned out okay. And I hope to, when Jordan's old enough, share the story with him of his older brother and the fighter that he was. And he will always have, an older brother who's looking out for him. And, and that's definitely a story I want to share with him when he's old enough to understand.
Awesome. I love that. I love that your rainbow baby pregnancy was definitely different, but you shared about the triggers that you had throughout your pregnancy and going and birthing at the same hospital, which is brave to do because a lot of women don't even do that either, right?
That's
they
true.
Switch hospitals and switch providers just so they can have a different outcome. So that's amazing that happened for you. I would love for you to just share with our listeners any tools or resources, books, things that you use to help you on your healing journey. I know you mentioned therapy. We're a huge component of therapy on Sisters-in-Law. Were there any other tools or resources that you use to help you on your healing journey?
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say that, therapy in African-American community is always something that, that's its own stigma, right? But I think that it's very important that we don't, because we have a tendency to think we'll pray on it and we'll get past it. And prayer is amazing and prayer is powerful, but the Lord put therapists on earth for a reason. Okay. So that is definitely something that I really, really encourage people to do for whatever the situation, with everything going on in the world right now. I think everyone needs some outside support that can help their mental health. But for me, a few things that I did is I looked at support groups. Again, it's not a club that anybody wants to be a part of, but sometimes being with other moms who've experienced something similar, not exactly, but something similar sometimes is a good place to go to. Because you don't have to explain your story. You don't have to sometimes hear the negative or kind of far off comments that others make. You're with other people who've experienced something similar. So even if it's an online support group, I found groups on Facebook very, very helpful. Another thing that I found really helpful was the hospital gave me a memory box that had, after I delivered him, they put, the hospital, the blue and pink hat on. They put that on him. They wrapped him in the blanket, gave me the box with the blanket, the hat, cards, some other things. They did his fingerprints, his footprints. So I have that. And I have from my last ultrasound, they gave me a recording of his heartbeat. So all of that is in the box. And I go through that from time to time just to still feel connected to Jaden. It is something that is comforting to me. It's not something I can do a lot, but it is when I want to feel, close to him. I want to be able to feel the blanket and feel the hat and touch his handprints and his footprints. I go to his memory box and I find that's a resource that has been helpful for me. But the biggest thing is just understanding, not understanding, but figuring out ways to celebrate his life. Even though he was not on earth a long time, how can I celebrate his life? If it means every year on the anniversary, I release balloons, or I make a donation in his name somewhere, or I write his name in chalk on the sidewalk, something to celebrate his life. It's actually, and I'm so thankful to be able to do this with you today, because today marks 5 years since his heart stopped. So for the past 5 years, I've tried to, on this day, figure out a way to honor him. And I think today, 5 years later, being able to share his story with you and all of your listeners is a way to celebrate his life today.
Oh, how special is that? Thank you so much for sharing that, Laura, with us, and being able to do this on this day. We're recording this podcast on June 11th.
Yeah.
And it's such a blessing. Thank you so much. And he is honored. He is definitely smiling down on us. And Laura has been dropping gems for you all. We cover all this in our training about how to support families through bereavement. But it's awesome that they did all of that for you, because as you know, and as you called your local hospital, many hospitals don't. Yeah. They don't have the tools or the resources to help you to support families like that. So how positive your experience was, the memories that you have. So it's good now you can give that back to your local community, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
I'm happy that you shared that. So as you know, there is so much going on in this world: civil unrest, police brutality, a lot of riots, protests going on. And we are just living in a time of uncertainty, right? Our listeners may have had their fertility treatments canceled or postponed for the year. A lot of women are pregnant after loss and during this pandemic, right?
Yeah.
What encouraging words can you leave with our listeners during this time of uncertainty?
I would say, going back to what I had mentioned before, that it's okay not to be okay. And as mothers, as women, we take on the world and we try to do it all. And even though we can do it all, that doesn't mean that we don't have our breaking points at times. So allow yourself to not be okay. Allow yourself to take breaks. Don't take on too much, because we tend to do that too, that we say, okay, well, we're home, we're quarantined, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Well, no, maybe that's not what we need to do today. Make your mental health and your emotional stability, make that a priority. We have to, because if you're not in your right mindset, if you're not in a good place, mentally, spiritual, physically, like, you're not going to be able to be a good mom. You're not going to be able to be a good wife. You're not going to be able to be a good partner or daughter, whatever. You have to be in a good mind place. And sometimes we have to take a step back and say, okay, what do I need to do to take care of me? I preach self-care constantly to my clients. And it's hard because, like I said, women, we get busy. We start taking care of everybody else, but we don't take care of ourselves. So make yourself a priority. If it means that you have to put it on put an alarm in your phone, because I had to do that for myself. I put an alarm in my phone for 1 to 2 times a day, either first thing in the morning or in the evening, whatever time works for you. Pick a time where when that alarm goes off, that is your time. If it means that you go and take a long hot shower by yourself, that means that you go and get a coloring book. Like, I've really been encouraging moms to color. Like, it is so relaxing to just remove yourself from all the stuff, from the media, from the news, from social media, from the world, from all this responsibility we have. Sit down and color. You'll be amazed how much that helps. Listen to music. Take a walk. Being outside, get your vitamin D, okay? Do not sit in the house. You have to take care of yourself. And I'm not saying go out for hours at a time. Make it 10, 15, 20 minutes where you go outside by yourself. And I know that's hard when you have kids and you have other stuff, but put it on your calendar. Make yourself a priority that for at least 1 or 2 times a day, you have your time. And for me, I look forward to it because my time is at night. So I have my alarm set for in the evenings. So after my son's asleep, everything is, semi-quiet. That's when I look for, okay, when that alarm goes off, I know it's my time. So that's when I'm going to color. That's when I'm going to listen to my Whitney Houston. Yes, I am a Whitney fan. I'm going to listen to my Whitney. I'm going to sit in the tub, or like now that it's nice, I'm sitting outside on the porch, just listening to the birds chirp. That's what we have to do. We have to slow down. We have to make our mental as much as important as our physical health. We have to take that time. So ladies, set your alarms on your phone to make yourself do that.
Awesome. So where can we connect with you after this episode? Drop your social medias.
So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook under Gooch Empowerment Services. That's GOOCH Empowerment Services. So I am on social media. You can look me up on LinkedIn under my full name, which is Laura Gooch Brown. Again, that's GOOCH-Brown. So please reach out to me if there's anything, if there's any way I can support you guys. Like I said, I'm expanding my reach as far as different workshops and trainings around mental health for, like I said, for children, families. So however, we can connect, please reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing on this podcast. It has been a blessing, and I know my listeners will be blessed. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com. To stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter, please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.
Ready to buy a car, a home, or just want to take control of your money? Your FICO score matters, and 90% of top lenders use it to make decisions. Check your FICO score for free today without hurting your credit score. Visit myfico.com/free or download the MyFICO app today. MyFICO gives you the score lenders use most, plus credit reports and real-time alerts to help keep you on top of your credit. Visit myfico.com/free and take the mystery out of your FICO score.